Good evening. My name is Kathleen Brown, Chair of the Virginia Beach School Board, and I call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please announce the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in the school board chamber are Chair Brown, Vice Chair Weems, Mr. Bowensteel, Mr. Callen, Mr. Culpepper, Mr. Cummings, Ms. Dwyer, Ms. Felton, Dr. Green, Ms. Melnick, and Ms. Rogers.
Thank you. Please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance as you are able. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there are no awards this evening, and we are now on to the adoption of the agenda. Are there any modifications to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, I call for the motion to approve the agenda as presented, moved by Dr. Green, seconded by Ms. Dwyer. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the votes to approve the agenda.
So, Madam Chair, we have 11 ayes. The motion to pass for the adoption of the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Dr. Robertson, do you have any recognitions this evening?
I do. We're pleased to introduce you tonight to Michelle Clark, formerly an administrative assistant at Ocean Lakes High School, who is now the next coordinator of adult academic programs at the Adult Learning Center. Congratulations. And I see you have some guests.
I do have some guests. My husband, Jay Clark, who's a teacher in the division. My sons, Ian and Aiden Clark, both product of the division and at First Colonial. Camille Harmon, my new boss director of Adult Learning Center, Dr. Leslie Ittner, my principal at Ocean Lakes, and my administrative team at Ocean Lakes.
That's impressive. Well, I know Jay well. We taught at Tallwood and when he was coaching there for a long time. So I know he does a lot of things for the division. We appreciate you and looking forward to your success.
Okay, there are two sets of meeting minutes tonight for approval. Are there any modifications to the February 17th, 2026 special school board meeting minutes as presented? Seeing none, I call for a motion to approve the February 17th minutes as presented, moved by Ms. Dwyer, moved by Mr. Callen, seconded by Ms. Dwyer. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the votes to approve the February 17th meeting minutes.
So, Madam Chair, we have 11 ayes. The motion to pass for the approval of the February 17th meeting minutes.
Thank you. We are now on to the February 24th, 2026 regular school board meeting minutes. Are there any modifications to those minutes as presented? Seeing none, I call for a motion to approve the February 24th minutes as presented. Moved by Mr. Bowensteel, seconded by Ms. Dwyer. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the vote on the February 24th meeting minutes.
So, Madam Chair, we have 11 ayes. The motion to pass for the approval of the February 24th meeting minutes.
Thank you. Okay, we are now on to the public hearing and public comments portion of the agenda. The board will now hear both the public hearing on the fiscal year 26-27 school operating budget and fiscal year 26-27 through fiscal year 2031-32 capital improvement program, as well as public comments on matters relevant to pre-K through 12 public education in Virginia Beach and the business of the school board and the school division from citizens and delegations who signed up with the school board clerk prior to noon today. The purpose of the public comment section is for the school board to offer an orderly forum to receive public comments during the school board meeting. I call upon all speakers and all persons in the chambers to be civil in discussion and decorum. Whatever views you wish to express, the school board wants to hear from you and to ensure that all viewpoints and perspectives are heard. The best way to do this is for all of us to strive for civility and respect. Madam Clerk, could you please introduce the first speaker?
Thank you. Our speaker for the public hearing on the budget is Heather Sipe.
Good evening, Chairman Brown, Vice Chair Weems, members of the school board, and Dr. Robertson. My name is Heather Sipe, and I am president of the Virginia Beach Education Association. I'm here this evening to speak on the budget. When I looked at the agenda packet uploaded to the school board website, I was pleased to see you were finally being presented with options that address the step disparity on the unified scale. However, what was presented to you during workshop session was different from the 3 options in the public's version of the agenda packet. I'm going to share some of that information with you as part of it touches on what Chair Brown asked about. The first option for consideration posted in the public agenda packet fully fixes the step disparity, bringing the unified scale in line with the instructional scale at 1.5% between all steps. What it does not do is increase the base pay, which will be a detriment to recruitment. The cost associated was $5,878,319 above what is currently budgeted for wages. This would give a range of 0 to 8.77% raise, which per Crystal Pate is not an option with the state mandating a minimum 2% for SOQ positions. I understand why option 3 wasn't presented, as it is the least favorable consideration. It does not give an increase to base and only adjusted 0 to 14 to 1.25%. I understand you are bound by the constraints of funding formulas, and this option gives a $1,124,006 surplus back to the division to use elsewhere. However, it does the least to give staff what they truly deserve in compensation. Eliminating any percentage increase to the base pay while only adjusting step 0 to 14 to 1.25% is insulting. It would also not be as acceptable as the raised range was 0 to 5.08%, which does not meet the state requirements of 2%. The second option posted in the public agenda packet was different from what you guys were presented still, increasing the base pay 2.5% and beginning to address the step disparity by increasing step 0 to 14 to 1.25%. This has an associated cost of $5,016,579 above the current budget and gives a 2.25 to 7.44% raise range, meeting the state's requirement for SOQ positions. The increase in base pay will help with recruitment, and the adjustment to the steps shows a good faith effort towards fully fixing the step disparity. A public commitment by this school board to finish addressing the step disparity within the next 2 budget cycles would go even further to showing that you truly value your staff. The other proposed increases to staff will benefit the division's recruitment and retention efforts. Increasing the educational allowances for advanced degrees so they exceed our neighboring divisions is a smart move, as is ensuring there's no longer a disparity between the instructional staff and other staff holding the same level of degree. One's job title should not dictate the level of allowance for holding a master's or doctorate. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, we're going to move on to our public comments. Our first is a student speaker, Zakai Vasquez.
And you can pull that microphone down if you need to.
My name is Zakai, and I'm here to talk to you about Virtual Virginia. I found out last week that my middle school plan is going to be different now, and I don't like that. I don't understand why this needs to change. I feel like there are many reasons why it should stay the same. I've been to private school, been homeschooled, and I've gone to public school. 5th grade at Parkway Elementary was actually one of the best times of my life. It's not that I don't want to be in school, it's that the environment stresses me out. Being in school during the day is overwhelming to me because of how many kids are there and how much time I have to be there. I'm there to learn and I care about learning. I just want to do my work and keep going. I don't need all day to do that. I have anxiety and think differently sometimes. Virtual allows me to learn at a different pace without feeling stressed out about what kids are doing or how they are treating one another or being disrespectful. By being virtual, I still get to be a Lancer and participate in school activities. That allows me to be around my peers and it helps me stay connected. For 2 years, I've done weightlifting and conditioning. Last year, I was on the debate team, and this year, I was on the Scholastic Bowl team. I even earned a coach's award for that. I did the spelling bee and participated in the park cleanup. I have used the library, met with my school counselor when I needed to, and was able to attend the 7th grade event at the convention center a few weeks ago. I am proud to be a Virginia Beach student, a Lancer. Please do not let them take that away from me. Not all kids learn the same way, and not all kids' families can homeschool. Some kids just don't like being in school environment for learning, and I don't think we should be forced to be there. Learning is something every kid needs and something that everyone does differently. Since being physically at school is not something I'm comfortable with, by eliminating this program, I feel forced to be homeschooled for my last year of middle school, which I was really looking forward to being my best year of middle school. Now I won't get to do all the things I was looking forward to. Part of me feels like I'm being punished for someone who has the anxiety and thinks differently. As a virtual student, I'm able to do all the things other students are doing without the stress and being around things that make me feel uncomfortable, like the longer days, the environment, and the crowd of people. I respectfully ask that you please help them reconsider taking this program away from middle schoolers and keeping it as an option. Thank you.
Our next speakers are Carrie Diop, Stacy Seville, Speaker 3 canceled, and then Susan Wallen.
Good evening. I'm here tonight regarding the district's decision to discontinue Virtual Virginia with live instruction and the associated case managers supporting these students, and move to another virtual platform that does not offer live instruction. Virtual learning may be discussed as a convenience, but for some families, it is a basic access to free and appropriate public education. It is stability, and for the first time in years, it's success. I see now exemplary performance in challenging classes, and confidence continues to grow. The impact of this decision has not been fully considered because no one asked the parents for input. We received an email on Tuesday with the expectation to decide by Friday without robust information. When a school division removes an entire placement option, like live virtual instruction, it limits the ability of IEP teams to make those decisions now and in the future. Virtual with live instruction and virtual without are vastly different delivery models. Parents can spend many years advocating to have access to a public education that works for their children. The right mix of support that has been working for us is Virtual Virginia. All these pieces working together have provided something we were searching for, an environment that works for them, real engagement, real support, and real progress. Will you embody your values to empower every learner, value differences, and provide each student with what they need to succeed? I respectfully ask the board, pause this decision pending further review, more feedback from parents, and Special Education Advisory Committee input. Thank you for your time and commitment to supporting and empowering all students.
Our next speaker is Stacy Seville, Susan Wallen, and then Cody Connor.
Stacy is actually at the emergency room with her son, so she couldn't come. But she did send a letter. If someone can, nope, okay.
I'm sorry, I wish I could, but our bylaws
I
don't
thought so,
allow
but
for it.
I
Thank
figured
you.
I'd at least say it. Okay. I'm Susan Wallen, then I'm the next speaker. after
Okay.
that.
Is there one more speaker in between them?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Good evening. My name's Susan Wallen, and I'm the parent of an 8th grade student currently enrolled in Virtual Virginia through Corporate Landing Middle School and a court-appointed special advocate for the city of Virginia Beach. The recent announcement that VBCPS plans to move to the Virginia Beach Digital Campus, which would eliminate synchronous virtual instruction, is deeply concerning for our family and many others. I understand that part of the division's long-term goal may be to encourage more students to return to in-person learning, and I respect that goal. For some families, however, virtual education is not simply a preference, it's a valuable tool that allows their child to access school successfully. Speaking only for my family, I would absolutely love for my 8th grader to go back to in-person education and thrive there like his brother's doing at Ocean Lakes. But that's not currently an option for him. He has been successful for the last 3 years at Virtual Virginia. Since the widespread virtual learning during COVID, there's been significant research on what works in online education and what doesn't work. Studies consistently show that teacher presence and real-time interaction are critical drivers of student engagement. Synchronous instruction, where students can interact with teachers and peers, ask questions, and receive immediate feedback, significantly improves emotional, behavioral, and cognitive engagement in online classrooms. Even as adults, while we may learn something from a TED Talk or a podcast, we get much more education out of an interactive discussion. This interaction is especially important for students with neurodevelopmental differences. These learners rely on structure, routine, and immediate feedback to remain engaged in academic work. The level of a student's executive functioning plays a major role in their ability to learn asynchronously, just as it affects whether adults are successful in remote work environments. This platform change also raises important questions about accessibility. Removing synchronous instruction entirely may unintentionally remove a critical support on which some students rely. I respectfully ask the board to reconsider this move to VBDC. At a minimum, please consider preserving a synchronous option, whether through continued access to Virtual Virginia or live instruction within the Virginia Beach Digital Campus. From my understanding through the conversations this week, the decision was not made by the school board, so I hope that the board will consider these 3 questions when evaluating this change. First, what research or evidence did the district rely on when deciding to eliminate synchronous virtual instruction? Similarly, was an impact analysis conducted on how a fully asynchronous model will affect students with disabilities or executive functioning challenges? And finally, how will the district ensure equitable access to instruction for neurodivergent students who rely on structure and live teacher interaction? When decisions affect how students access their education, it's critical that we ensure those decisions truly serve all students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And if you want to leave her letter with the attorney right here, I'll have the clerk scan it into the board.
It's on my phone. I don't.
Oh, okay. Do you want to email it to us?
That'd be great. Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Cody Connor and then Betty Spencer.
What to say after watching you carve more of my children's rights away. You know, when I was growing up, I went to 7 different elementary schools, 3 different middle schools, and 5 different high schools. So after I had to move my family around a bit during the first couple years of COVID, when we moved here, I promised my kids we would stay. I wanted them to have long-term friends, roots. I wanted them to have the things that I didn't. I want them to have more stability, more opportunity, more freedom. Above all else, more freedom. But we're failing there. My kids are growing up in a world that is less free than the world I grew up in, and you don't have to take my word for it. There's people that track these things, organizations. Do you know what we're currently ranked on the Human Freedom Index? The Land of the Free is ranked 15th. And that's actually high. The Freedom Foundation has us ranked in like the 50-something. And the Academic Freedom Index, we're ranked like 85th. We've been rapidly losing academic freedom. In the last few years that I've been here protesting your poor decisions, academic freedom in our country has been rapidly disappearing. It only takes but a single generation for freedom to be lost. I think it was Reagan that said that. You guys ever think about that? About whether or not the decisions you're making are making us and our children more or less free? Because you should be thinking about it more than anything else, more than costs, more than right or left or blue or red, because it's bigger than any of that. The most important thing to you should be whether or not you are making our society, our children, our country, our future more free. And I know you're scared. I've sat here and listened for 3.5 years about how terrified you are of trans kids and books and diversity. But people that are willing to trade away their freedom for safety will eventually find themselves neither free or safe. The greatness of a nation isn't measured by its wealth or its military might. The true greatness of a nation is measured only by the freedom of its people. Please remember that and make good decisions.
Our next speaker is Betty Spencer.
Good evening, Chair Brown, Vice Chair Weems, Superintendent Robertson, members of the school board, faculty, staff, parents, students, and community members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Dr. Betty Spencer. I am a concerned citizen of District 10. I am also a graduate of Virginia Beach Public Schools and a parent of a 2023 graduate of Princess Anne's IB Academy. I would also like to acknowledge, after reviewing the recruitment and retention funding considerations to enhance compensation and educational benefits presentation, it is clear that the division is continuing to examine the important strategies to strengthen recruitment and retention across our workforce. And for that, I would like to acknowledge the Department of Human Resources for the work that went into preparing this presentation and outlining these funding considerations. Competitive compensation plays a critical role in that effort. Over the past 4 years, Virginia Beach has made meaningful progress, increasing salaries by more than 26.6%. That effort matters and reflects a commitment to supporting our workforce. However, regional comparisons show that our work is not yet done. Currently, entry-level teacher salaries in Virginia Beach rank last among the 7 cities, with neighboring divisions offering between 2 and 8% more. The unified pay scale considerations presented, including adjustments to entry-level pay and the proposed step differentials between steps 1 and 14, reflect an effort to address both recruitment and salary compensation. These differences affect both recruitment and retention. New teachers entering the profession must consider whether they can afford to live in the city and in the communities that they work. At the same time, experienced educators look across the region and they see compensation structures that may influence their career decisions. The funding considerations presented, including adjustments to the unified pay scale, part-time rates, educational allowances, professional development reimbursement, and additional duty supplements, represent thoughtful efforts to strengthen division's overall compensation structure. These investments help strengthen workforce stability, ensure our schools can maintain the experienced educators and staff who support student learning every day. It is also important to recognize that these discussions exist within the broader relationship between the school board's recommended budget and the funding allocations made by the Virginia Beach City Council. The school board identifies the needs of the division, while the City Council ultimately determines the level of funding that makes these priorities possible. Continued collaboration between these two bodies will be essential if we are to remain competitive in recruiting and retaining the talented educators and staff who support our students every day. Thank you.
And that is time. And Madam Chair, that was our last speaker for this evening.
Okay, thank you. We are now on to the PRC recommendations, and we welcome Cami Linetti, School Board Attorney.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, School Board members, and Dr. Robertson. I'm Cami Linetti, the School Board Attorney. And on behalf of the Policy Review Committee, I will be bringing you recommendations from the Policy Review Committee's March 4th, 2026 meeting. There are only 4 that we're going to cover tonight. The first 3 are bylaws, which will have to go on to the action agenda if you're ready to go to the next meeting, and one is one policy. The first is Bylaw 136, which is open meetings, closed meetings, electronic meetings, and remote location meetings, participation meetings. There are no proposed changes to this bylaw, that we are simply monitoring it for the 5-year review. Are there any questions about this bylaw? Hearing no questions about this bylaw, we'll move on to 137, which is the annual organizational meeting. Again, after reviewing this, we are not making any recommendations for changes. This is simply coming up for the 5-year review. Are there any questions about bylaw 137, the annual organizational meeting? Hearing no I'm sorry, Vice Chair.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify, bylaw 136, isn't that for, aren't we supposed to do that annually?
Yes, I'm sorry, that is correct.
So that first one is our bylaw that we review that one every single year. That's why it's got a 25 and 26.
That's true. There was a change made to the Freedom of Information Act a number of years ago, then we do have to check that every year.
So that one's every year and the other one's the 5-year. Okay, thank you.
All right, hearing no questions on 137, we'll move on to Appendix C. Appendix C is at the end, you have 3 appendixes to your bylaws on there. And because we were looking at some issues that needed to be corrected on there, we are going to make some recommended amendments. So under section A4, which is posting to the committee web page, under section B, we're now going to read, school board standing committee meetings may be broadcast or done electronically unless circumstances exist that do not allow for this. Then we will be removing out the next couple sentences, and we will have a new sentence that will say, student discipline committee meetings will not be broadcast or done electronically for public viewing, but may be otherwise recorded. As you've known, this past year, we've started broadcasting some of our meetings for committees, so we want to recognize that. For student discipline committees, you have roughly 6 of those a month on there. Because it's almost all done in closed, the only thing you would be doing in open session would be to read it out of closed and read the decision. So we determined that that would not be necessary to broadcast. Under number 5, electronic meetings for remote participation. The final sentence, we just needed to correct the verbiage there, and last sentence will now read, opportunities to participate in a meeting that has been changed. And then moving on to 6, public access to meetings. We want a clarification, and we will add a final sentence that will read, public comment is not taken at committee meetings unless required by the school board. It's not been your practice to take those, but occasionally we do have ad hoc committees where we're getting information on certain specific topics, so we added that section to reflect that. Moving on to section B, which is meeting agendas and meeting minutes. We will clarify under meeting minutes will now be numbered as number 2. We will add a section A under this. We'll be addressing student discipline committees. And it will read, student discipline committees are not required to maintain meeting minutes or have the committee members approve such minutes. However, student discipline committee meeting agendas, closed session certification decisions of the committee should be retained for each meeting. Notice of student discipline committee meetings will be available to the public. However, agendas and agenda materials will not be made available. That reflects your current procedures on there. Because of the nature involving students and confidentiality, we generally don't put that information out to the public. Moving on to section C, this is annual election of chair. And again, this is chair of the committees. We did have some issues earlier this year, so we wanted to clarify under number 1, annual election of committee chair. It will read, at the first meeting in the new fiscal year or at the first meeting when all committee members are present. And that happens with student discipline because there are 3 of you on those committees, and sometimes we've had situations where we could not get all 3 of you together at the first meeting, which could have been July or August. Sometimes it was September, so we want to clarify that that's when that would happen. If you go down further into the paragraph, under the paragraph that starts with, if the former chair is not on the committee in the new year, the senior most school board member on the committee, and we would strike out, or the school board chair in an ex officio capacity, will conduct the meeting until a new chair is elected. Then we would add a new sentence. If there is no senior most school board member on the committee, or the senior most school board member is not available, then the school board chair designee will conduct the meeting until a new chair is elected. So we thought that would clarify an issue we had raised earlier this year. There was a minor addition on section 2, just some clarifications. Other than that, there are no further recommendations for this appendix. Are there any questions about those amendments?
There are. Ms. Rogers?
Hi. So under 4B, under the school board standing committee may be broadcast or electronically, blah, blah, blah. At the very end, it says student discipline committee meetings will not be broadcast or done electronically for public viewing, but may be otherwise recorded. Should we not add by the school division? Because I would hate to be in a discipline committee meeting and have a parent think that because this says this, that they're able to record. Does that make sense?
I understand your clarification. That would be something Mrs. Weems. Technically, they probably could if it's their own meeting on there, but there might be other individuals in the room that we don't want recording. So that would be probably a clarification.
That's just my concern.
Is that something you want to draft and send back? Something?
Well, Yeah, that seems like a very reasonable addition to make it.
I just want to make
I
sure.
mean, it's already being recorded by Ms. Turnbull, obviously.
Right,
this
but I just
clarifies
don't-
it. But to make sure that people
It's
can't bring their
For the
recordings.
public's
Yes.
purposes, when you're in closed session, we actually tape record what's happening in the room, so there is a record of it instead of a
Right.
transcript. It functions as a transcript. That becomes the official record.
Right.
So
Right, I'm fine with all that. I just want to make sure that we don't have this out there and that it's not misunderstood that we allow recordings by anyone else. Does that make sense? That's why I'm just saying,
Okay.
when it says recorded by the school board or the school division or, you know.
Yeah, so I would say just add viewing, but maybe otherwise recorded by the school division.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's it.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Does anyone object to that addition at all? Okay, so if we could just add that.
We'll
for the next
clarify that
meeting, just
before the
wanted to
next
make
meeting.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Melnick?
Okay, under 2C, a school board member's ability to remotely participate due to a temporary or permanent disability.
I'm sorry, which, are we on bylaw 136?
2C. It's still under D, remote location participation in meetings, and then it's under,
You're under bylaw 136, not appendix C, correct? Or-
not, yeah.
You're on a previous file.
Yeah, you're not, okay.
All right, so,
Oh, it is? I missed that?
yeah, we're on 130, so then 136.
Oh, were you talking 130, bylaw
Is
136?
that what you're talking about, or are you talking about appendix C?
Appendix C. Right here?
Appendix C is up here.
Oh, we already,
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, there is a 5 electronic means remote participation.
I was following that and I thought I should have asked, but you didn't go as far into it, so can I go back? and
So we
ask?
want to do 136? Is that
Okay.
okay?
Okay, thank you. The pages aren't numbered,
Yeah.
but it is the third page. C, a school board member's ability to remotely participate. So just to remove, I just want to know how much subjectivity is involved in this. So, so a school board member can participate remotely as long as it doesn't create an unreasonable hardship for the school board or the committee to administer, does not unreasonably interfere with the school board's or the committee's ability to conduct its business, the school board member can clearly be heard, etc. So who decides when it becomes a hardship? So I'm thinking back some years ago, we had a board member who had a life-saving surgery and missed, I believe she was out 6 weeks. So where is that line?
I think it comes to the school board itself. When somebody asks to participate remotely, they're supposed to inform the chair at that point if you have a disagreement on there. And the way it came up when we first looked at this was, what if someone were to come in and say, I never want to come to school board. I'm never coming in. I'm going to remotely. I'm going to say that I am disabled and I cannot come in. And so I will never, in my 4 years on the school board, show up. And that then interferes with some of your ability to get work done. So we were thinking in those circumstances, you would maybe be able to make a decision. Also, you could be participating from somewhere where we cannot get the transmission through appropriately. You're continuously going to that location and with the public cannot hear you, or you can't get that information, you're cutting in and out on us.
That would come to the full board for discussion?
Correct. When you ask to participate remotely, at that point, somebody would have to make an objection as to why they did not think the remote participation was appropriate, and those might be some of the conditions.
Okay, my other question is, participating for a personal reason, and it specifies that during the meeting, the specific nature of the personal matter and the remote location from which the school board member is participating. We do that, but I thought I have heard people say, I'm participating remotely from wherever, but then they say for personal reasons.
They should be stating the nature. I've heard some work on that, or they can say personal.
But personal reasons can't be used. I just wanted to clarify that, so.
Correct. Differentiating from a medical situation,
Okay.
which has unlimited amount, you do not have to specify with the medical situation where you're
medical.
from on there. If a personal reason, you should be giving some explanation, or you can put it in written. You can send it to the chair, and it can be kept written.
And then the chair would read that?
They should. Normally, the clerk, somebody will ask you where you are. You have to, because it's personal, you have to say where you are and the reason. So you should say for work reasons or personally, I'm on vacation.
Yeah. I'm fine with all of this. It's just, I wanted that clarification, but sometimes people participate remotely and they're out of town, and not everybody wants the general public to know that they're out of town just for safety reasons. And
Unfortunately, that is a free information requirement. You have
Okay.
to, for personal reasons, you have to state where you're participating from.
okay, so if somebody's out of town and they don't want people to know, the public to know that they're not at home, that their home is potentially vulnerable, it would be better just not to participate.
That seems to be a conversation we would have in closed session with your legal counsel as to how you would handle that.
Okay. I'm not trying to be difficult. It just, not everybody wants people to know that they're not at home. Not everybody Facebook posts everything they do. So,
One of the reasons you see this sometimes in the freedom of information, if you have a number of people gone, they might be in a location, they might be at a convention somewhere, and that goes to the amount of people where you are. Is it open? Is it available coming in? We don't normally have a lot of you at one time, but there are those situations that freedom of information is trying to say. If you all, let's say, Las Vegas for a convention, you want to say we're all here, then the public would have a reason to know that and go to see to make sure you all weren't all together in the same room, in which case that meeting might then have to be open for free information purposes.
okay. I just thought it was a fair question, just because, not being home, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and actually kind of to piggyback on that, specific nature of personal matter, is that specific required under FOIA or just the location? Because I mean,
the
I'm
nature of
just
your
curious.
personal matter, because if it's not really personal, but you should probably say I'm at work, I'm on vacation, something of that matter. You don't need to say I'm here attending a funeral for my brother-in-law or something to that degree, but you should be expected. So they have to reason know
So
why
I
it's
mean,
personal.
how would you designate that then? How would you say it? Would you just say that's personal?
A personal matter out of town for a family event or something of that nature. Now, the other choice is you can put it in writing and submit it to the clerk or to the chair, and it can be kept in the record that way.
Okay, so
But
you're
that would
saying
be
then we
open for
wouldn't announce
information.
it.
Then you wouldn't, yeah.
Okay.
You would
But
say
it
it
would
was
still be
personal matter, but the
subject to
nature is in that, however, free information, they would be allowed to FOIA and get it from us, but we could keep that documented in that manner.
So
Then you might be back.
you'd be back by then.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So, all right.
Thank you.
So I think we were on C. You had finished reading C. Just
I
before.
think that takes it to our last one, which is policy 259.
Well, just let me make sure that nobody else has any C questions. Okay.
I don't know, am I still in C?
We're on C now.
She had read C, and there was a couple of questions related to Appendix C, and I just wanted to make sure there was no additional questions before we move on to policy.
I do.
Okay, Ms. Melnick.
Would this also be about public access to meetings? About public comment is not taken at committee meetings unless required by the school board.
Correct, and that's been your procedure. You don't normally do public comments because you don't build in the time for that. However, I was thinking in circumstances, on an ad hoc committee, sometime we had one like in Jericho Road, that might be something where they wanted to hear the input from the public. But that would be in the call or the designation for that ad hoc committee. So I could see an ad hoc committee might pull stuff, but that's not typical. You don't generally take public comments with your
Okay, but unless we decide it's necessary, we can do it. I ask because at GSA and CSEP, we do take public comment. And so I just wanted to make sure that we still have that ability if a need arises. Okay.
You would designate that in either the call, the purpose for the committee, or the school board might direct a committee to take comments. That would be how you would handle that.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to policy 259. This is in your administrative section. This is currently titled as outside legal counsel, and we're proposing that you change the title to outside legal counsel, payment of employees, legal fees, and settlement authority. Legal fees has already been in there, but we want to clarify on the settlement authority. So under A, which is employment of outside legal counsel, 1 is authority to employ outside legal counsel in subsection A. And we'd like to add there are some minor grammatical changes in there, but we'd like to add a final sentence that would read, Outside counsel retained by the school board's insurance carrier to represent the school board or its officials, employees, or agents do not require school board approval. And that's because that's generally been through your insurance carrier. They designate, they hire the attorneys, they designate. So you don't approve that. And that's nothing new. That's just designating what's happening there. Clarification in B has a minor addition, clarifying instead of his or her, we were going to put the school board member. We would add a C for the paragraph starting with notwithstanding, a couple of grammatical changes there. Then you would move on to a D. We would add D, which would be retention and payment of outside legal counsel for those employees who contracts require or allow for its retention and payment will be done in accordance with the contract terms. There are at least 2 employees, that's the superintendent and myself, who have separate contracts with provisions on legal counsel, so we just recognize that there. Then you would take what's currently paragraph D and make that E. Then we go down to section 2, which is selection criteria. I'm proposing removing section C. That was a requirement the city attorney's office used to have when we were still city attorney's office, that it had to be a local office. That's not always the best value for you. We have outside counsel that we use from other areas such as Richmond. They're more efficient, more cost effective. So I'm proposing we take that out, which would then renumber a couple of the paragraphs down there. You do have referral to the city on there, and we're going to take out reference to the city and to council members. That harkens back to the time when we were still the city attorney's office was representing the school division. Under section 3, which is direction and reporting, A, it would be outside counsel shall work at the direction of the school board or the school board's duly authorized designee. The school board's in-house legal counsel is authorized to work with outside legal counsel regarding routine matters and will communicate with the school board regarding the status of the legal matter. When the school board's in-house counsel has a conflict with legal matter or is the subject of the legal matter, the school board chair will be the direct contact for the outside legal counsel. We strike out the rest of the paragraph. There are minor grammatical changes go throughout section B. Then we're proposing adding a section C. And we want to clarify, and this has come up a couple times that the school board may not be fully aware of, when we have a lot of minor issues that your risk manager handles, and risk managers have some settlement authority. We want to clarify this in the policy. So we are proposing adding a section C, settlement authority. The school division's risk manager or the chief financial officer are authorized to settle negligence, personal injury, workers' compensation claims, contract, intellectual property, and other legal claims against the school board, the school division, or its employees, officers, or agents under the circumstances set forth below. That would be 1, settlement authority does not exceed $50,000. The school board's insurance carrier and the school board's insurance carrier and the school board's in-house legal counsel or outside legal counsel assigned to the matter have reviewed and concurred regarding the settlement offer. And 3, the school board and the superintendent received notice of the settlement within a reasonable period of time after the settlement is accepted. You have a lot of very small claims. We have buses that occasionally hit a car, hit something on their minor contract issues, things that your risk manager handles, which within his discretion. We thought this would be more efficient that we clarify here that your risk manager is able to handle that. So that's our recommendation, to codify the procedure. After that, there are no further. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I see before that the settlement amount that we authorized was $20,000. And that is going up to $50,000. And it seems like it's quite a jump. What is the rationale behind that specific number?
I think it's an older figure that was put in there a number of years ago, and at the point I have the discretion to do that on there. What we were looking at when there are a lot of claims that you don't necessarily see, but that we go over on a quarterly basis with our insurance carrier, with the risk manager. There's small issues, it seems small, but a car accident costs a little bit more when you hit something, and their workers' compensation, you may work a deal out and something minor like that. So we thought $50,000. Well, yes, it's a large amount of money. It is not in the litigation world a very large settlement. This would be a very small amount.
I mean, I guess, and I don't think it needs to necessarily be written into policy, but I think it'd be nice if, maybe quarterly, maybe semi-annually, if maybe the board can get a report of what those are, just so that we have a grasp on what that is.
That would not be a problem. We actually meet quarterly with the insurance carrier, and we have a list of the litigation, and we go back and forth on that. So we could certainly show you what that is, and then we'd show you with this. With these settlements, we would come to you and report to you when it was settled. But there is a list of this, what I'll call small litigation matters that we regularly review.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cummings?
Yeah, I was just gonna echo similar comments that our chair made. I noted that you said a lot, so my next follow-up question will always be how many are in that bucket. So I think the quarterly board reports or 6-month reports will probably satisfy my question as well. So,
And that's not a problem. We have a normal procedure for that. We could certainly show you what that is.
Okay, thank you. We are now on to the local special education annual plan application and report for VDOE. And we welcome Dr. Ronnie Myers-Dobb, Executive Director of Programs for Exceptional Children. And I did get an email from the SEAC chair, and so I don't know if you want to share that as well.
Sure. Megan Ashburn, SEAC Chair, usually accompanies me for this part of the presentation. And she unfortunately had a family situation that she has to take care of, so she is not here. So she actually sent an email, copied Ms. Brown on that as well. So when I get to the end where she usually speaks, I will read her email. Okay, good evening, Chairwoman Brown, Vice Chairwoman Weems, school board members, and Dr. Robertson. I am Ronnie Myers-Dobb, the Executive Director of Programs for Exceptional Children. I am here this evening to provide information pertaining to the Division Special Education Annual Plan, Part B, Flow-Through Application and Report, which is often referred to as the Annual Plan Application. Tonight's presentation is an annual requirement to inform you of how we intend to spend allocated federal funds based on the requirements outlined in the application. The annual plan application serves as a formal agreement between the local school board and the Virginia Department of Education for implementing federal and state laws and regulations governing special education. Local educational, sorry. Local educational agencies are required to submit this application each year according to the federal provisions of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 2004, as well as state regulations governing special education program for children with disability. Prior to this submission to VDOE, each school division must review its annual plan application with its local special education advisory committee, also known as SEAC, and submit it to the local school board for approval. And as I shared, Megan is not here with us tonight. The annual review is critical because the disbursement of federal funds appropriated for the education of children with disabilities is contingent upon the approval of the plan and its components. A portion of the application includes certification of adherence to a list of assurances delineated by Virginia Department of Education, which ensures the school division has developed policies and procedures for the provision of special education and related services, which are consistent with the policies and procedures that VDOE has established in accordance with IDEA and its federal implementing regulations. Assurances such as those listed on this slide are examples of actions required to maintain compliance with federal and state regulations. The terms free appropriate public education and individualized education program are often heard in the field of special education. These two concepts are specific to each student qualifying for special education services. As each student's IEP is developed and reviewed by the IEP team, determination is made about the supports and services needed to ensure access to the general curriculum and to the maximum extent appropriate, the student being educated with peers without disabilities in the least restrictive environment. In addition, the school division has policies and procedures designed to prevent over-identification or disproportionate representation by race and ethnicity of children with disabilities. In addition to the statement of assurances, the annual plan application requires school divisions to submit information about select special education programs and expenditures. One required component is information about the division's jail education program, or JEP. State regulations mandate that special education services be provided to incarcerated youth with disabilities who are in our local jail, the Virginia Beach Correctional Center. Such services are delivered according to the students' IEPs by special education teachers. An interagency agreement is in place to address staffing and security issues. Maintenance of effort, or MOE, is the requirement of each school division to spend at least the same amount of local or local plus state funds in the delivery of special education and related services as spent in the year the division last met maintenance of effort. Two additional components are listed on this slide. Proportionate set aside, or PSA, is the requirement for each local school division to set aside a specific federal dollar amount to be used for children with disabilities who are homeschooled or parentally placed in private schools within our jurisdiction. Each year, our division hosts the required collaborative consultation session with participating Virginia Beach private schools to determine how best to use the federal set-aside funds. Funds may be used for direct services, consultative services, equipment, or materials. Direct services will be used for the provision of speech and language services due to the strong linkage between speech and language skills and overall literacy. The annual plan application also requires a recap of the division's use of its federal funds for the prior fiscal year, as well as our anticipated expenditures for the upcoming fiscal year. The division uses the federal funds for the intended purposes of the grant, including expenditures for personnel, materials and equipment, and professional development opportunities, with most funds used for personnel. So this slide breaks down our annual plan's projected budgets for 26-27 Part B, Section 611 and 619 grant funds. VDOE has not yet released official allocations by locality for next year, and divisions are asked to prepare a budget based on level funding within the school current year. Our recommended budget is summarized in this chart. These funds represent less than 12% of the division's special education funding. Part B, Section 611, flow-through, also known as Title 6B, will continue to support personnel and benefits and professional development. There is a change with this. There are 9.5 positions that have been removed from this application. They are 5.5 social workers, 3 behavior intervention specialists, and 1 behavior intervention specialist TA. And that is because, again, we have to do level funding, and with the increase in salary and health costs, the grant is not able to sustain the same amount of allocations as it has in the past. Part B, Section 619, Early Childhood Special Education, also known as Preschool Incentive Grant, will also continue to support current personnel, benefits, material supplies, and professional development for early childhood special education teachers. Indirect costs for both were calculated at the current rate of 2.4%, and full details are located within the annual plan application. So as noted earlier, each school division must review its special education annual plan Part B flow-through application with SEAC prior to submission of the plan to the school board and subsequently VDOE. On February 26th, the annual plan was shared with the SEAC's policy review subcommittee, and then on March 9th, it was shared at SEAC's regular scheduled meeting. So Megan did send an email saying that she was sorry she was not able to make it to the school board meeting. Again, her mom is having some health issues and she needed to tend to that. She takes her SEAC responsibilities very seriously, but sometimes she's stretched thin, and she said to please forgive her absence. She shares that I presented the budget to the SEAC and that they supported it. The only question they came up with was if the 9.5 positions will be maintained next year through another funding source. So at this point in time, I will take any questions.
Ms. Melnick.
That's my question too. So what is the impact with that reduction?
So social workers obviously are part of the eligibility process, and then your behavior intervention specialists and the behavior intervention specialist TA, support general educators and special educators and working through some of those interfering behaviors that some students exhibit. So when we were in the development of this process, we did communicate with Mr. Jamison about that because all of those positions are actually under his office and they are long-standing within this grant application from historical structure when some of those groups actually were a part of OPEC. So I do know that he has been having some communication about.
I like to hear that because so the public knows our special education numbers have grown exponentially.
Correct.
And that's a little concerning. That's a significant reduction in staff. And so that brings me great pause. So on the other side, this is my other question. You mentioned the local jail education program. So you're talking about the correction facility, Virginia Beach's correction facility, not the juvenile detention
Correct.
center. Okay.
Correct.
How many students do we have there now?
It varies. I mean, we could have 6, we can have 11, we can have 3.
Okay.
So that grant, we have 1 instructional specialist, and
Okay.
then we have some part-time staff when needed.
All right.
So
Thank
it
you.
basically supports the 1 instructional specialist.
Dr. Green?
Thank you. And you've answered part, you probably knew I was going to ask you about the 9.5. So my question may be, or it may be more of a comment, and Dr. Robertson may be able to answer some of it. We are required by law the time frame for completing student evaluation. So if you're short social workers who have to go out to the commute to a home and get social history as well as some other things, that would be significantly impacted. So I guess, Dr. Robertson, my question, and you may not be able to answer it right now, I'm sure there's a plan in place as to how we are going to fund those positions, especially those social workers, because they are so crucial, as we all know, to the eligibility process.
Yeah, so the plan right now is to take a look at some of our other title grants and how we allocate the funds from those grants to see if we can fold some of those positions into those grants. And what we can't fold into those positions, I'm going to have to come back to the board and make a case that because of the nature, and you just described with the social
Right.
workers, we may need to add them to the operating budget. I know that's not something we want to do. And so what we cannot take care of through the other title grants, I'll probably be coming back to the board.
Right, and you will have no choice because, I mean, that's a federal mandate. And then I would assume for the behavior specialists, they're built into the IEPs so how is that working in terms of what support they will provide or not be able to provide?
So they don't provide a service through the IEP.
Okay,
They support our general educators and our special educators
Okay.
and coming up with the plans, behavior intervention plans. Yes.
okay, all right, thank you.
Ms. Rogers?
So I don't think I'm going to put you on the hot seat. I think I'm going to put Dr. Robertson on the hot seat. Sorry.
Okay.
But I'm been told, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we are one of 4 cities that the military designates if you have a student with special education needs, if you need to be, live somewhere and you have a student with special education needs, we are one of 4 cities. That's correct.
I don't know if we're one of 4, but we're definitely one of those cities.
Okay.
Correct.
So my question then is more budget related. What kind of supports do we get from the military and the federal government for taking those students? Because we do have an increase in special education students, and that is in part because we are one of those designated cities by the military. So are we getting funding for that from the federal government? And if not, can we chase that?
Ms. Pate, do you want to talk about the funding piece?
I think I would have to double check because on the military connected, we usually did get grant money, federal money for that.
Right, but that's for all military children, correct? So, okay.
There is a string of funds related to federal impact aid we get from the Department of Defense specifically for military connected students with severe disabilities. It's a very small population of students, and we work very closely with Dr. Myers-Dobbs' office to report on that information to the federal government so we can get additional funds to support those students.
So we are getting funding for that at the moment.
Correct. We do
Okay.
receive that annually based on what we report.
That's what I was wondering, because someone had asked me, do we get funding for that? And I said, I have no idea. So that's why I was asking. And I don't know if there's anything else that we could ask them for under that same vein, but you know.
No, because it is tied to the information we report annually in our total impact aid application for the division based on the number of special education students we report in that collection of federally connected students. It determines whether or not we're eligible to receive that funding, and then they contact us to say, hey, you're eligible, please submit an application with the required information so that you can receive these additional funds.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Cumming.
Yeah, I'm going to probably repeat some of the things that my colleagues said, so maybe some more thoughts and not a question, but that 9.5 number is important to me as well, and so I'd be open to seeing how additional funds might be able to be utilized, as we were talking about our wish list and whatnot, be utilized for helping support those staff. I was on a recent school visit, and I got to hear firsthand how important our social workers are, and for supporting our schools and supporting our students, and how much they're utilized. And I can't imagine, and how they're already stretched thin across multiple schools. And I think those folks have extremely good job that they're doing with our kids, and that it's important to go beyond the Social Worker Appreciation Month and show that we have boots on the ground to address student needs. I know it's important for my district as well, as I have talked about this specifically within my district. And so I just wanted to close out just my thoughts that, I had a recent school visit, and I like to reference my visits a little bit because it takes, the theory into practice. And I got to see, observe firsthand a major win in the special ed classroom. And I know that these folks work extremely hard for our students, and whenever you're in their spaces, you see them dedicated on the ground, in the chairs, to helping these children find education, helping them learn, and that they're not just building accessibility, that they're building opportunity for these kids. And so when I read through, the grant application, this one particular moment came to my mind of where I got to observe a kid like bright smile, winning in life. And the whole building was excited about this. They were talking about it in the hall. They brought us into the classroom to see this observation, to see what was going on, because they were very excited. So I do applaud the work that you do for creating opportunity for these kids, and I hope that we could figure out as a board how to ensure that we have the appropriate staff for this population.
Vice Chair Weems.
Yes, as you have prepared us in the budget workshop for things that may come in case we get more money, what is the dollar amount that we're talking about, ballpark figure of these 9.5 positions? Do you remember?
Yeah, a little over $1 million.
Okay, all right. Okay. And then also, I'm sorry, Ms. Ashburn couldn't be here. She does take her role very seriously, and she does a great job, and we appreciate you, Megan. And the whole committee as well.
Ms. Melnick.
So the House and Senate budgets both include additional funding for special education. If that is approved, will that render this conversation moot, or is this different money?
I think it's different money.
Okay, so it won't matter.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions, thank you, and I just wanted to, do shout outs to the Special Education Advisory Committee. I am a liaison to that, and I can attest that Ms. Ashburn takes her role very seriously, and as do all the members of the committee, and also, they have vacancies if anyone wants to apply. We are now on to special elections, and we welcome Tommy Shattuck, Director of Security and Emergency Management.
Good evening, everybody. I have stuff. Give me 1 second. See me for 2 presentations this evening, and on the back half of the information, so we're almost there. Good evening, Chairman Brown, Vice Chair Weems, board members, and Dr. Robertson. My name is Tommy Shack. I'm the Director of the Office of Security and Emergency Management. This evening I provide a school board with a brief overview of the upcoming special elections that we have on March 17th and April 21st, and I'll go over the update to the curfew ordinance here in Virginia Beach. So I believe first to bat, Regina, is special elections. Thank you, ma'am. Just checking. And we're off. The City of Virginia Beach Voter Registration and Elections Office has set March 17th as the voting date to fill the vacancy in the 98th Virginia House District created by the passing of Delegate Barry Knight. The special election will only be held in voting precincts found in the Virginia 98th House District. Early voting for this upcoming special election began on March 6th. City of Virginia Beach Voter Registration and Elections Office, as authorized by City Ordinance 10-1, has identified the following 13 schools that will serve as polling locations for the special election. And they are on the screen right now with their accompanying precinct numbers. Good? All right. So our plan. VBCPS intends to continue in-person education for all students and staff at all 13 school polling locations. The Department of School Leadership, the Department of Communications and Community Engagement, and the Office of Security and Emergency Management have already taken the following proactive measures to ensure a safe and secure learning environment during this special election event. We provided information and guidance to our school principals, conducted site assessments with principals to ensure separate voter entrances, prepared messaging for families and school staff, reviewed traffic safety and emergency operation plans, scheduled additional security staff to monitor the polling locations, and coordinated with the Virginia Beach Police Department. On April 21st, the City of Virginia Beach Voter Registration and Elections Office has set April 21st as the voting date for the proposed Virginia constitutional amendment that seeks to adopt new congressional districts. This special election is being held in all polling precincts throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. Early voting for this proposed amendment change began on March 6th. City of Virginia Beach Voter Registration and Elections Office, as authorized by City Ordinance 10-1, has identified the following 58 schools that will serve as polling locations for the special election. Stand by for a lot of schools, and sorry for the small font. So those are your 58 schools being used for April 21st. Our intentions. Due to the large expected voter turnout and the considerable number of school polling locations, VBCPS recommends transitioning to synchronous learning for all schools during the special election on April 21st. Synchronous learning is instruction that occurs in real time with teachers in their classrooms and students at home engaging simultaneously through the live virtual platforms like Google Meet. Any questions from the board about March 17th or April 21st and our intentions?
Ms. Rogers?
So this would not be for you, Mr. Shattuck. Thank you for the presentation.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
appreciate it. But my question is really for Dr. Robertson. Why are we not doing asynchronous and synchronous instead, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so our default on inclement weather days is to go to asynchronous after a day because teachers haven't had the chance to prepare synchronous lessons. But with this much notice, we can absolutely have teachers prepare for synchronous learning sessions to be delivered on that day.
All right, because my concern is that with synchronous learning, you are then requiring parents and caregivers to be there to ensure that the students are getting on and are staying on their Chromebooks and are, doing all of the things as a school day. So my concern is more for our parents who have to work, and with asynchronous learning, if a student can't get on their Chromebook at a certain time, the parents aren't available, they can do that then at a different time. And especially this being a voting day, will that then impact their ability to go vote as well? So those are just my questions that I'm concerned with when we're doing synchronous versus asynchronous, if that makes sense.
Mr. Callen?
I'm curious. An April election is exceedingly unusual.
Yes, sir.
And so I hope you're right, but my curiosity is, why do you expect such a large turnout?
It's a statewide election, sir. It's a single issue on the ballot. It's just one issue, but it affects the entire Commonwealth. And so for our lens, it's mostly about the number of schools being located that are using as polling sites. That limits our support. So that's why we're recommending that we do either synchronous or asynchronous learning at those sites.
But you're not aware of any information that suggests that the turnout will be large. You're just assuming?
Well, my position in my office is to assess data and talk to the election board and look at the data we have. And so looking at the number of ads, looking at the community, looking at social media, seems to be a very topic that's going to drive voters to the polls. And so based on that assessment and talking with the election officials in Virginia Beach, they expect it to be a large turnout as well. I met with Christine Lewis and Donna Jordan, who are on the election committee, their board of electors for here in Virginia Beach, and they also expect the same thing. So based on those conversations and what we're seeing on social media and the news, my expectation is we'll have a large turnout, much more so than the March 17th election.
Well, due to the seriousness of the subject matter that surrounds the election itself, I hope you're right. But I was just curious as to the expectation. But again, I do hope you're very right.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cummings?
Yeah, my questions are more about the synchronous learning day. And just help me understand, what's the walkthrough and communication plan? I know we're probably still in the midst of figuring it out, but what's that communication plan going to look like to parents, the community? Do we have designated Wi-Fi places encouraging folks, to go to somewhere? Or I assume maybe like library, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've done this type of work before.
Perfect.
And so there are locations throughout the cities that kids can access Wi-Fi if they don't have that. Mr. Den and his connections has a really good idea of what areas of our city would be impacted. But the message would be, with board approval of our recommendation, would go out right after spring break to give everybody plenty of time to prepare, teachers to talk to their students, field any questions for this particular plan.
Mr. Culpepper?
I guess I have a similar question to my colleague here. It's no small thing for us to do a synchronous or asynchronous learning day here, somewhat off the cuff. Obviously, there's a little bit of time to plan, but for a lot of families, that means taking a day off of work, which is not insignificant. So I guess I'm trying to just understand what the precedent is here for this, because obviously for the national election, the November election, we plan for that way ahead of time, and that's a day off of school. So we can deal with that. But we normally don't close school for primaries, do we?
Not presidential primaries. We haven't done that in the past.
Yeah, and those are citywide. The March 17th one, that's unique that we only have a small area of the city that's got to vote. Normally, it is citywide. So I guess I'm trying to understand what the difference is here.
So my assessment in our office, based on the conversations with the election officials in Virginia Beach, and that is, to Mr. Callan's point, is an issue that has incited passion in the Commonwealth, based on the congressional districts being rezoned. Having the voting population come into our schools during arrival, dismissal throughout the day is logistical challenging from a logistics standpoint. Having those people in our buildings, having voters come in starting around 6 a.m., all the way through Parks and Rec, all the way through our education process.
But we've done this before, though.
We have, sir. So my assessment recommendation was that we go to either async or synchronous education to avoid the logistical concerns of having that voting population. This is a unique election on the property.
I don't think you're wrong about that, but that's not unique within the last few years.
Well,
forgive me.
My assessment is the issue that's being decided on April 21st, based on the passion of the issue itself.
All right, I may have to ask you afterwards why you're coming to that, because you obviously don't want to say it now. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Sure, okay.
Vice Chair Weems?
Yeah, that was kind of my question, because I know when certain primaries, the presidential primaries, we didn't do that. So in the small, on the planned school operations for March 17th, you're going to conduct site assessments to ensure separate voter entrances, schedule additional security staff. So basically you have it covered for March because it's a small number. And are you saying we don't have the resources to ensure that type of separate entrances and security staff to monitor.
Yes, ma'am.
At these 58
So
schools,
on
is
the
that
March,
why?
yeah, on the March 17th plan, so my team, which is the two coordinators, myself, and about 4 security officers, in addition to the layer of already existing security in the school, will be focusing on those 13 schools throughout the election period. So we'll be monitoring those polls throughout the day. Once we expand to 58 schools, it lessens our ability to have that kind of just patrolling ability to patrol all those schools on that one day. Our office is, comparatively smaller to other offices. We're well staffed and fine with that. But for this day, we're good. But we have only 3 of us in the coordinator and directors level, and only 4 of our OSIM security officers that can also act as additional layers for our in-house security. Once we expand to 58, our ability to keep an eye on all these polling locations is diminished.
And the city doesn't provide anything for those, for voting. I can't even, how many hundreds of times have I voted? Are there are they city people there as well?
They supply civilian employees to help put the machines up.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But as far as security.
But as security, Virginia Beach Police Department has our SRO program, and as a former police officer and a sergeant, what we would do on election days, we'd assign our patrol officers with, parallel duties that day. But if we get a busy day where officers are working accidents or other cases, they can get pushed away to other places. So I can't guarantee that we have the coverage of 58 schools citywide with SROs and precinct officers.
Well, obviously safety is paramount, but also face-to-face instruction, the kids in the building with their teacher for, multiple reasons that we all know is very important and is a priority as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Green?
Thank you. And Mr. Shattuck, thank you for your presentation. I'm going to come at this from having been the building administrator at Plaza Annex that served as a precinct. So colleagues, it's either feast or phantom. You have no way of knowing what the voter turnout is going to be. Everyone knows to have an umbrella when it rains, but being precautionary to carry one if it's going to rain. And so in this case, my point is we need to do diligence and be prepared for whatever. And when I was at Plaza, and we didn't even have students, just the comings, goings all day, redirecting people to the right entrance, making sure people are not wandering through the building. Dr. Robertson, you've been there too with some of this. It changes the entire structure of your day. I was in a building of adults. We did not do PD. It really, because we were 12-month employees, so we had to be at work. So to have to do this with kids, oh no. The safety concern, there are so many variables to this. It looks easy from the outside, but even looking at what we're doing on, March 17th, kudos to those schools that are gonna, they're gonna be heightened with making sure, people are not wandering, people are parking in the right place, not blocking buses, and lunchtime, going out, making sure, we should take this administration's recommendation for closing on the 21st. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and I do not believe that Ms. Melnick has gone yet, so Ms. Melnick and then Ms. Rogers.
Okay. So just so the public knows, we did not select this day, and our polling locations for 58 schools. That's a lot of schools. So I understand the synchronous day for that, and I think our teachers, with this kind of heads up, they'll be fine. It'll be okay. Back in the day, I think all election days, we had parent-teacher conferences those days, that was a different scenario. Let's hop back to March 17th.
Yes, ma'am.
For District 98. that small list of schools, where will the voting take place? Is it that in the library on those days?
No, ma'am. So our team went, following last week's senior staff meeting, our team went to the sites individually.
Okay.
And part of my mission to them was identify places where you can vote that offered external access only.
Okay.
We do not want, the public wandering through hallways during transition. We don't want the public wandering through our cafeterias or our libraries during the school day.
Okay.
So the mandate for me was identify locations. Our principals had a lot of grace and were very patient with us, and it was very collaborative, and they were fantastic with it. But the mandate was that in the vast majority of our sites will be in the gym.
In the gym.
Where you can, like SeaTac Elementary, it's where I vote. You can go in the back, and there's an entrance that's separate from the school.
Correct.
Where voters are kind of socialized to that, of going to the gym areas.
Right.
And so, with the exception of one school, maybe two schools, we're still using external doors to get to the
Okay.
location place.
Okay.
And
Yes,
we work,
because in most libraries there might be an exit into a courtyard, which is, yeah, okay.
and to the
All right.
to the credit of the election folks, they have a list of the locations where they want things placed, and they were very amicable to putting it somewhere else to be.
Okay.
They understand the ask as well.
Okay.
And so we had a meeting with them a month ago where I explained that we're probably going to push those locations, like Shawbridge is in the library or in the cafeteria. We have to feed kids. We can't have it in the library or the
Correct.
cafeteria.
Right.
And they were very amenable to it, and they were very understanding. So
Okay.
for the 13 schools, of the 13, 11 are in the gym. One's in an art room, which is on the outside of the building, and one's in a band room, also on the outside
okay.
of the building.
Okay.
This is a much smaller election. During the general election in November, only 35,000 votes were cast. That was a general ballot, so it was all the candidates on that slate. This is a single issue, one candidate or two candidates for one position.
Right.
And early voting started on last
Yes.
Friday. So
For 98.
my expectation is that we'll have a low voter turnout
Okay.
in 98th compared to the April 21st election.
And then there'll be appropriate signage outside also, right, for voters? So like
yes,
Christopher Farms, you
Yes,
come
ma'am.
into the school, to get to the gym, you have to go back and around past the dumpsters, and then there's a back entrance into that. So that'll all be.
It's required by the state,
Okay.
and we'll have people on stage set up the night before, and we'll
Okay.
make sure that's out there, and we'll be out there very early. Sorry, team, about there very early, by 5 a.m. to
Okay.
make sure there's appropriate signage. So we don't. The thing about the signage, it keeps visitors from going to the front door.
Correct.
And we
Okay.
don't want voters going on our A phone and trying to vote at the main desk.
Okay.
Right, so we're going to make sure we have our teams out there, and for the high schools and middle schools, they have robust security teams.
Right.
We're going to amplify our security at the elementary level to give them extra support to get them where they need to go for the voting. So we don't want the two to mix.
So for the elementary schools affected, we hope for a very sunny day that day so all the kids can play outside. Otherwise, sorry teachers for a day of PE in the classroom.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for all this work.
Of course.
Ms. Rogers? Thanks. So for March 17th, that is affecting local districts 5 and 2, which is House District 98.
Yes, ma'am.
And so the location of the sites affected are also close to here. Since I live up the street, Mrs. Melnick lives up the street, we are the two districts that are affected. So, I mean, I'm very familiar with all the schools that are going to be affected. But I think for the other election that my colleagues were concerned about, I did not grow up in Virginia Beach, and I moved here in 2016. Our primaries, since I've been here, they've been at mid to end June, correct? For presidential primaries, I'm asking because, yes. Oh, the presidential primaries are in March?
2024, I believe, was June 18th, was the Republican primary.
Okay, that's the one
I'm not certain of the Democrat.
That's when I
but
ran.
June.
No, it was in June. And so that's why I'm saying if we had presidential primaries in June, that would not affect our students. So if we had all locations open, it would not affect our students on June 18th. We would have already done graduation and everything would have been done. So having all schools open would not be a factor. So I think that the big factor is our students being in the buildings in April versus in June, they're not there.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, and this is obviously a huge ask with your security team because of the amount. I always tell people Virginia Beach is a very small city where people know each other, but the amount of
mileage you have to cover to get from one end to another is incredible. So that's going to make it difficult for y'all.
On April 21st, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
March 17th, it's General Booth Corridor. It's all the schools
Yeah.
geographically
No,
located. Yeah.
that's
Yep.
that's District 5, my people. So I mean, it's much easier to navigate that than, you know, everywhere from, you know, District 6, District 4, 8, 6, 2, 5, all of it. So in any event, so I just kind of wanted to ask about that primary because we were talking about the presidential primaries and that it had happened, but we didn't have students in the building, so that kind of makes the difference.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Mr. Cummings, I just want to make a comment first really quick. The presidential primary in 2024 was actually on March 5th. So our school buildings are open during those presidential primaries. There was just one primary to my recollection at that time. But I have really mixed feelings. And part of the reason is that our calendar is set, and I understand. I am struggling from an emergency standpoint when there's been special elections for many years, and school buildings have been used as voting precincts for many years, and virtual learning was not an option. It's really hard for me to want to change something that families have relied on. I understand the teacher preparation, but the parents are also in need of preparation. You know, and I agree with my colleague that said it isn't insignificant. You know, I do worry, especially about our underserved communities. And so I would prefer to have our students in person whenever possible. But my preference would also be that if we're going to throw a scheduled early, 1 month in advance, hey, we're going to do a day of school, my preference would be that it would be asynchronous, not synchronous learning, so that families can still find ways to navigate around that. So I feel like my first preference, again, is still in person, because that's where I feel like students learn best. I feel like there has been ways, and I do recognize the challenges, but there are also election officials. They are able to call law enforcement, you know, and we have done this before. It's not something that, I mean, the virtual learning came out of COVID, so we've done it before. But anyway, it's not really a question. It's just a statement. That's my thoughts, Mr. Cummings.
Yeah, thank you. Just for clarification for my own self, is this something that the board's gonna be voting on, or okay? When are we anticipating?
You guys will be voting on this recommendation in the next meeting, March 24th.
March 24th.
The March.
So the 17th one was not, we were telling you what we would intend to do, so that one doesn't require a vote unless you guys wanted to. But the more significant impact for the April election was important. And if I may be able to address kind of some of the whole of the board conversation that you're having, because this is exactly why this was brought in front of the board, is because we don't take these recommendations lightly, and there's a lot that goes into it. And Dr. Green, you described a lot of the challenges related to that. And so there's a thought of, we're doing comparisons to what's the difference between the 17th of March and the 21st. I think Mr. Shattuck kind of helped put it all together with, it's a small number. So when you have to start talking about moving one voting location, which is typically used, to a gymnasium, which is an external door, and you only have to do that on a small number of buildings. And then our security and emergency management staff in a local small area can spread themselves across that, reduces risk. This is a risk conversation. So when you go to that many schools without additional security support, risk goes up. When you put that many vehicles and people and around our building, challenges go up with getting parents and their kids there, with getting buses there, with having our staff have the ability to park. We also will have many people on our sites that may not be allowed to be on our sites on any given day, but they're a voter, so now they will be allowed on our sites. We will not be able to easily identify things that look odd, because that day will look odd for how many visitors we have at that site. So our ability to be able to predict actions based on what we can observe goes down. So just understand this is a risk balance conversation. Clearly, we're going to leave the what type of instruction over to the instructional side of the house. But as this relates to this recommendation is to reduce risk for everybody in the division. That's why it's a recommendation for whatever type of instruction to not have students in the building on that day.
Just to follow up, because I think that's also what I'm thinking about is just the risk assessment piece. And I definitely hear my colleagues' perspective, you know, what we do for primaries and how we go about that, and then also hear, you know, anticipated turnout. And my quick thoughts are, you know, just having worked the polls, and I know all of us have worked polls, and, you know, seeing all these folks in our schools helping people vote, you know, I always think like, well, where are people going to the restroom while kids are in session? How are we closing that off for just city staff? Do we close that off for citizens? Do we close that off for people, you know, poll greeters outside? You know, I think something like simplistic like that could actually be, as you're saying, being an overarching problem, right? Like, are they going to the right place? Are they going to the teacher's restroom? Are they accustomed, you know, at where I vote at ROFO, going to the one like right by the doors? Well, I know that seems like a simplistic thing. That's the type of risk that I think about. And so I appreciate you bringing in that perspective. I mean, I don't know how turnout will be. I haven't really honestly looked too much beyond the issue, but I do personally err on the side of safety of our students, of our community, and I appreciate just this insight and the future discussion about it.
All right, thank you. We are now on to the update on the city curfew, and
Still me.
take it away.
I'm going to try it with the glasses this time. The City of Virginia Beach has adjusted the curfew for minors, moving the start time from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. for individuals under 18. The curfew continues through 5 a.m. This new curfew will go into effect on March 19th. One second. There are exceptions. This is from the city ordinance. Any emergency errand reasonably necessary to safeguard life, limb, or property. Number 2, lawful employment, including going directly from the minor's residence to the place of such employment or returning directly from the place of such employment to the minor's residence, to and from work. Number 3, attendance at a specified engagement or performance, attendance at a religious service, or participation in any assembly or expressive activity protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, provided that the minor shall have in his possession written permission, including the signature, address, and telephone number of a parent, guardian, or other adult person having care, custody, or control of such minor to attend such activity or event, and shall return directly to his residence upon conclusion. And the last exception is interstate travel through, beginning, or terminating in the City of Virginia Beach. Possible outcomes. A minor out past curfew without an exception may face the following. Be provided a verbal warning or issue a citation, in this case it's a Class 4 misdemeanor. Taken to a designated pickup location. Taken to a non-secure, state-certified crisis center or juvenile shelter if deemed in the minor's best interest, or taken to the juvenile intake division for further processing under Virginia law. If a minor is out after 10 p.m., several city facilities have been identified as pickup locations for parents and guardians throughout the city. And as a reminder, this starts on March 19th, goes into effect. And any questions at this time?
Ms. Melnick.
I don't have a question and nobody really cares about my opinion, but I'm gonna state it anyway. This is a great move on the part of Virginia Beach. This is a great move. I tell my adult kids, nothing good happens after midnight. I always think about it at nearly 60. I think nothing good happens after midnight. But I know that there has been an uptick in gun thefts from automobiles by minors. And we learned that, Dr. Robertson and I learned that last year when the city was going to put out a public statement about minors and gun thefts from automobiles. So I guess little PSA, lock your car doors if you choose to leave your guns in your car, which you shouldn't do. But I appreciate the proactive nature. And I think this is a win-win for the city of Virginia Beach, for our students. And all you need to do is look what happened in the 1800 block of Atlantic Avenue this past weekend.
Yes,
Where they minors were shot. Well, they all weren't 21, I'll tell you that.
They were all under the age of 20.
They were all under the age of 20. And so, kudos, they have my full support on this one. Thanks.
Dr. Green.
Thank you. As a former, well, I still am a parent. I love curfews. I even use them now. Except nights I have school board meeting. I can't stick to my curfew for myself. So my question, Mr. Shattuck, and Dr. Robertson may have to weigh in. So nights we have school events. How is this going to look? Like there's a overtime at a football game, and we know what happens on Friday night anyway with traffic getting out of the different stadiums, or a basketball game, prom weekend, ring dance. So how does that look? Do we provide a list to the police department?
Yeah,
or-
so I provided this presentation to Leanne Turnbull, who's our Director of Student Leadership. She had questions about ring dance and proms. They've already been, it's prom and ring dance season coming up pretty soon. They often go past this curfew date. So we'll provide communication and support to that office for the student activity coordinators, get the word out about, to get a note from those children, so they'll have that ready. Speaking to the Virginia Beach Police Department this afternoon, I met with them in preparation for this meeting, and Chief Newdigate mentioned this in his article. They're seeking voluntary compliance with this law. And Chief Newgate even stated that they're going to give out warnings in the first phase of this. So if you're coming home from a basketball game, double overtime, and you won a game and you're driving home, and an officer pulls you over and you are from a sporting event, oftentimes as a police officer, we'll call your mom or dad and say, hey, is William your son? Yes. Does he play basketball? Yes, he does. He's on his way home right now. And they'll let him go home. So with those situations, unplanned events like overtime games and athletic events, law enforcement will be aware of that. And we have officers at all of our events as well. So they're going to be there as well. So they can communicate to their precincts, hey, the lacrosse game went over, or soccer went over, or football is going over because there was traffic. And Virginia Beach and our school division has a really good working relationship, and we'll communicate those things to law enforcement. As far as proms and scheduled events that tend to go past 10 p.m., I feel confident in Leanne Turnbull's team getting that message through student activities coordinators to the parents and to the staff and the students. You're welcome, ma'am.
Ms. Rogers.
So as a parent to a almost 17-year-old, I don't love this. Every day this week, my child is going to be at her high school until 9 p.m. practicing for the upcoming musical that she is participating in. She cannot come home late or she will get picked up by this. I read on social media that there were 37 children that were told to go home this weekend. So I'm not in love with it. And then the other thing that's concerning to me is that it is my understanding that during city council this evening, there was discussion amongst our city council about whether or not the school division should be responsible in helping enforce this, which I also do not love. When students are not participating in school events and they are doing things, even studying or whatever, this is unfortunately going to be a big lift for parents. I personally don't want to have to write my daughter a come home safely note anytime that she may be out past 8 o'clock, but that's if she's got to carry a note for me, then that's what's going to have to happen. I think that this is going to be, just a heavy lift for some parents whose children are especially working to support their families. We have lots and lots of kids that have to work to help put food on their own tables in their households. And I think that it's not great for them. And I think that instead of making blanketed rules for all the kids to have to abide by when they weren't doing something, we should probably target the kids that are doing something, and we do it in a more targeted fashion, and that is usually the differentiation that works best for everyone. But I didn't pass this law, so I just wanted to state that I am concerned that some of our students are going to be targeted when they are doing school events that aren't big events like a sporting event or a big event. There's tons and tons of events that we have going on that are small, that are site-based, that are going to probably affect our students. And so that does concern me.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cummings?
Yeah, I think my personal opinion aside on this, I would encourage my fellow board colleagues to watch the discussion in city council and the presentation from our police chief. I thought it was really good. It's a couple of weeks ago and is informative. I'm not a huge fan of punish the many for an actions of few, and that approach. And while I have mixed feelings about this, my biggest concern is how does this get communicated to our parents? We just learned about our school lunch debt and how people are accustomed to, not having to pay. And, I think at times, we see things in the news because we're very involved citizens of Virginia Beach, but I also wonder how much, our common parents are thinking about like curfew, like, oh, it's a football game. All right, go to IHOP afterwards, get pancakes, have fun with your friends, like 10:05, whatever. I remember I went to concerts that lasted till 11 when I was a minor. Drove to them all by myself, and now I guess this says I'll have to have a note from my parent. I'm just curious how I feel like I'd love for us to be very proactive in our communication to parents with the specifics that are, outlined here, and have a very aggressive communication strategy. Because I think the last thing, we want to see is, our students who are well-intentioned to hanging out, attending our events, going places, to suddenly feeling like they can't go to them. Because I know we said before that some of our school events do go past 10. So how's that changing and adjusting based on this?
So we do have a communication plan. It's going to, it's multi-pronged. So I will include in my next 2 monthly newsletters information about the curfew. Ms. Livitz is working with her team to provide schools with information they can put in their newsletters that go home to parents on a regular basis. We continue to tag the VBPD social media platform. And so, we recognize that we want people to get the message, but let's be clear, we need parents to be parents. Mm-hmm. And they need to make themselves aware of what's going on. We need our parents to talk to each other. Because, we will not be enforcing this with the Virginia Beach Police Department. This is not our rule. And if we have a child that gets stopped and there's an issue, parents don't call us. Call PD. Because we have nothing to share with you. This is a police matter that's been codified or, voted on and approved by the city. And so we're going to get the message out, but we need you to do your thing.
Yep. Thank you for sharing. And I also just wanted to say thanks to our chair, because I did ask for an update at this from one of our meetings, because I did think it was important to start the conversation to our community, to start thinking about, those moments that they have now with their kids, with the freedoms, that they had. And it's always interesting how, cities approach problems when, Texas as a state doesn't enforce any curfew well as 4 minors, and it's interesting just to see how different folks get together, try to solve problems. I'm not putting a positive or negative on it, but just when I was reading and watching the city council meeting, which I encouraged because it was really good presentation by our chief talking about youth violence. And it's just interesting to me to see how their approach was to solving,
Mr. Bowensteel?
Well, just for my 2 cents worth, I think that changing it to 10 o'clock is a mistake. I just see too much activity going on. I think it's going to cause more problems in the long run. I mean, most children that are under 16 are probably home or should be home, and you have a lot of people working. The police don't know they're coming home from work, and they're going to be pulling over people here and there, which to me could take away from what they really should be doing. Just my 2 cents.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Fountain?
Thank you, Chair Brown. Well, I do appreciate the curfew. This Saturday past, it was, I don't know what that was, it was phenomenal. And I drove at least 5 young African-American males down to the beach. And I took them the long way around so they could see the different scenery of the beach. And some of them had not been to the beach in the last year. And he's, oh my God, and I didn't know this existed. Really, I've always had the conversation with my African-American males. And as I was placing them out on the street to go to 16th Street, I said, act responsible. I said, because I know all my police friends, and I said I would have them call me to check you all out. And they all laughed. I said, I know Holcomb, I know Newdigate, and they were laughing. I said, but be on your best behavior. But Saturday, as I drove down the beach and drove down the Atlantic Avenue, it was so many young people out there, high school. I mean, you could name them. And once my little crew got out, they let me know that students were from all over the city that was there. Unfortunately, I've always had that conversation. Watch your back. Do what you're going to do, even before the curfew came down. One of my grandsons told me, he said, Grandma, I was just riding in the car. And I was in the back, but my friend was driving. He was white, but the police officer immediately attacked me in the back. He said, I didn't particularly care about how it went down. He said, but it was okay. I said, well, less said made it better on you. He said, but I was irritated by it. So I do concur with the curfew, but I've always had one. I'm like Dr. Green, we've always had a curfew. And now, thank God for iPhone, I'm tracking you. I got you on I'm tracking you where you are and where you're going. It just so happened that they all left before the shooting began, and we had a conversation. This is why when I was sitting on the Park and Rec Commission, we wanted more rec centers, more activities, more playgrounds, more people volunteering for the teams, baseball activity, pushing for that because the students need something to do. They're young people, and we need to make it. If we want a safe city, we need to start doing things to allow the city to be safe. And I still advocate, and I still talk to my city council people about more rec centers, more activities with sports that they can do that are community involved. I push for that because things like this will happen. I don't know. They said they didn't know. I questioned all of them. Did you know it? And they said we didn't know any of them, but we were just glad that we left before the shooting started. I hear all of you and what he's saying about the schools, but there's always been a target on some of our students, always. So with the curfew coming down, maybe it will help, maybe it won't. But my thing is, let's push more for rec centers and parks. I said, I would prefer you all going to a movie. And they, Flipper McCoy, and even that little game place that they have there, the one out on Independent, they still have a little problem with that little game place out there.
Apex?
Yes, Apex. They had a flood of police was out there last weekend. I went to see 1776 play, and all you saw was the activity there.
Yes, ma'am.
Good play. So my thing is, I'm for the curfew, but then there's other bigger things that we are not attending to that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Dwyer?
Well, I'm for it because the area that I live in, there's been an uptick in crime. So, you know, some people live in different areas. Mine specifically is having a go of it right now. And so I am definitely for it, and I'm sensing that that has a lot to do with the curfew. And also, I wanted to add that with minors that are employed, they can only work till a certain hour. So there's no reason why they can't be home by 10 o'clock as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Melnick?
I'm sorry to speak again. I just want to remind the viewing public, this did not come from Virginia Beach City Public Schools. We have no power over this, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And there's a simple fix, and that is a note written by a parent. Keep it in your car. It's just in your car, like your sunglasses, right? Just keep a note in your car. I'm on my way home from work. Here's my parent's name. Here's my parent's number. I won't name my kid, but I had one of them drive home. It was about 11:20, and he got pulled over. And he didn't get pulled over because he looked like an underage driver. He got pulled over because he was speeding.
I have one of those.
And then when the police officer called, it's very scary when a police officer calls and identifies themselves as a Virginia Beach police officer, and of course you think it's something else. And they said, your child was speeding. Do you know that they're out past curfew? And the answer was yes, and I'll take care of the other thing. And they let him go home. Yes. But I think that's important, and just keep a note in your car. I don't want people getting too upset. There are people that work. There are people whose parents are going to let them go to a 9 o'clock movie and come home after 11. Just write a note. Keep it in your car.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. And yes, this was an agenda request by Mr. Cummings, and I think it's important that our community, especially since, you know, we're dealing with minors here in education, that they're getting the message so that they know what that curfew is. You know, regardless of opinion, it's not our vote. It's the city's vote. And, you know, I have a recently 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, and, you know, I have always tried to kind of err my child to be home by 10 anyhow, personally, because I know that the instances of drunk drivers becomes much higher, statistically speaking, after 10 p.m. Occasionally he'll go to a maybe or something. And so that exception is there. So I do appreciate that they have given the parents the ability to write that permission, so that they have it. So thank you very much for providing that update. And I do hope that, I mean, we're not going to be enforcing it. I know another colleague mentioned that we would help enforce it, but I do think that maybe we should be involved in helping communicate the message so that families are aware, since we do have that mechanism in place. Anyhow, we are.
Thank you. Am I done?
Now on to the consent agenda, and we have religious exemptions. Are there any objections to the school board voting on the consent agenda as presented? Moved by Mr. Culpepper, seconded by Mr. Cummings. All those in favor, the voting board is open.
So, Madam Chair, we have 11 ayes. The motion to pass for the approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you. We are now on to the personnel and administrative appointments. I call for a motion to approve the personnel report and administrative appointments. Moved by Ms. Rogers, seconded by Mr. Callen. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the vote on the personnel appointments.
So, Madam Chair, we have 11 ayes. The motion to pass for the approval of the personnel report and administrative appointment.
Okay, Dr. Robertson.
Yes, Madam Chair, we're pleased that tonight you've accepted our recommendation for Jason Moker, currently Assistant Director in Building Trades and Physical Plant Facilities at Salisbury University, to be the next Director of Maintenance Services in the Office of Maintenance Services. Also, we're pleased you've accepted our recommendation for Joseph Barbero, a security specialist for the City of Virginia Beach, a former master police officer in the City of Virginia Beach, and a gunner's mate in the United States Coast Guard, to be the next Coordinator of Security and Emergency Management in the Office of Security and Emergency Management.
All right, thank you. We are now on to committee organization and board reports. Do any board members have anything to report? Ms. Melling.
Okay, it's not a committee report, but I want to share something with the board that tonight during our recruitment and retention presentation, I often wonder where all these pictures come from every week, you know, if they're just stock photos or random photos. And I turned to the page and I saw somebody I knew in the picture. And it's Zach Catwinkle, the theater teacher at First Colonial High School. And I texted him at dinner his picture and said, "Look, you made it into our board documents." He said, "I love it. Honored to be the face of teachers. You want to pay more." No, but this is what he said, and this is why I want to tell you about this. Have you seen the full video that came from? It was from the Virginia Beach City Public Schools National Board Series that apparently the National Board saw and wants to use somehow. And so he sent me the National Board Certified Teacher Why I Certified video. I have not looked at it yet. But Dr. Robertson, could you speak to that?
Yeah, so I believe it was recent, I don't know, it was 2 weeks ago or a month ago, we recognize our National Board certified teachers who go through a very rigorous process to earn that acknowledgement. And it's a process in an organization that it exists for all teachers in the country, but only a small number take advantage of it because it's such a rigorous process. And so evidently he's put together a video about the process that's going to be used on their national marketing campaign.
Look at that. See, Virginia Beach always rises to the top, don't we? Very good. Congratulations.
Vice Chair Williams.
Yes, I attended the Recovery School Harbor Hope Center Board of Directors meeting last week. And I'll tell you, they're hitting it out of the park. They're going beyond all expectations with that school. Right now, there are 10 or 11 students with about 3 on take-in process. One has graduated with a GED and is doing quite well. The staff there, I've been able to meet with them. They're awesome. They did an interview there, and they also did an article that was in the pilot either yesterday or the day before. So. Oh, was it? Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so it's just excellent, and it's just heartwarming, and we're continuing to move forward with that and getting the word out. Also, I attended the Gifted Advisory Committee meeting, and we love to have Dr. Lockett there because every time she speaks, she's so encouraging and about all the workforce development. So basically, they talked about how important CTE classes are for everyone, but especially for the gifted learner and how he or she learns, and that's so great for them. Also, they put on their agenda to discuss accepting public comment, like the governor's school and like SEAC and like CSEP and like the school board does. And so I was glad to see that, and it looks like that's going to move forward next time to be able to have public comment with that group. And then they shared their school reports. They go out and actually visit schools like we do, and they have a form, and they come back and share. So 4 or 5 members shared their school visit. So it was a very interesting and great meeting to be involved with. Thank you.
Dr. Green.
Thank you. And I'm going to dovetail on one of Mrs. Williams' comments since we've been joined together for a while. I remember when you brought the seed to the mental health task force for Harbor Hope. And in yesterday's Virginian Pilot, if you have not had a chance to read it, there's a great article in the Virginian Pilot on the status of where Harbor Hope is now. And great interviews, comments from Mr. Clark, our director there, the teachers, and the ones that had the most impact, the students. And of course, our colleague was highlighted and her pictures in the paper as well. So if you get a chance, do look at that article, read that article in yesterday's Virginian Pilot.
I just have a couple of things. I did attend the Special Education Advisory Committee on Wednesday. They were very curious about our vote at the last school board meeting in relationship to policy 5-54. So there was a little bit of discussion surrounding that and some questions. And so we did review that and, of course, what you saw here tonight, that presentation. Additionally, I had a colleague ask me recently about our school board retreat. I just want everybody to make sure you have that on your calendars for July 14th and 15th. I'm sure that in administrative matters here very soon, we're going to need to start soliciting some ideas about what that will look like. So if you have any thoughts or ideas, please reach out to myself or Vice Chair Weems and share those so that we can make sure that we're making sure that it's a productive retreat. I think we had a really good one last year, and I would like to have another great retreat this year. So that's what I wanted to share there. And Vice Chair Williams, we need to go back into closed session.
I move that the school board recess into closed session in accordance with the expectations to open meetings law set forth in Code of Virginia 2.2-3711, Part A, Paragraph 1, as amended, to deliberate on the following matters. 1, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, discipline, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body, and evaluation of performance of departments or schools or public institutions of higher education, where such evaluation will necessarily involve discussion of the performance of specific individuals. Any teacher shall be permitted to be present during a closed meeting in which there is a discussion or consideration of a disciplinary matter that involves the teacher and some student, and the student involved in the matter is present, provided that the teacher makes a written request to be present to the presiding officer of the appropriate board. Nothing in this subdivision, however, shall be construed to authorize a closed meeting by a local governing body or an elected school board to discuss compensation matters that affect the membership of such body or board collectively. Namely, to discuss A, employee grievance number 537-8-21-25.
Okay, motion was made by Vice Chair Weems. Oops. Seconded by Mr. Cummings. Mr. Cummings. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the vote to go into closed session.
Ms. Felton, how do you vote? And Melnick is not here. Dr. Green is not here. Okay, so Madam Chair, we have 7 ayes. The motion to pass to go into closed session.
Thank you.
Whereas the school board of the city of Virginia Beach has convened a closed meeting on this day pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act.
And whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be resolved that the school board of the city of Virginia Beach hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification applies. And only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered.
Motion made by Ms. Melnick. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Callen. Any discussion? All right, voting board is open for certifying closed session.
So, Madam Chair, we have 11 ayes. The motion to pass for certification of closed session.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair Weems is going to read a motion.
Resolution regarding employment, Part 2 grievance, employee grievance number 537-8-21-25. Whereas that on December 1st, 2025, a hearing officer held a hearing regarding grievance, high school security assistant complaint that he was not assigned the position of security lead for the 25-26 school year in retaliation for prior discrimination complaints. At such hearing testimony, evidence and argument were accepted by the hearing officer. On January 5th, 2026, the hearing officer issued findings of fact and recommendation. And whereas on March 10th, 2026, the school board reviewed the hearing officer's findings of fact and recommendation, the transcript of the December 1st, 2025 hearing, and the exhibits, and resolved that the school board adopts the hearing officer's findings of fact and recommendation. Further resolved that the clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to the grievant and his legal counsel, the school board attorney, the employee relations specialist, and the chief human resource officer, who is directed to place a copy of this resolution and the exhibits in grievance personal file adopted by the school board of the city of Virginia Beach this 10th day of March, 2026.
Motion made by Vice Chair Weems, seconded by Ms. Dwyer. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the vote on the motion read by Vice Chair Weems.
So, Madam Chair, we have 6 ayes and 5 nays. The motion did pass on the resolution read by Vice Chair Weems.
All right. Before we go, Dr. Robertson, we have a special meeting next week, correct?
Well, that's the plan right now.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, and so we're gonna plan that at 4 p.m.? Okay, so I just want to make sure that everybody has that on their calendar before we go. It is 8:41 p.m. and we are adjourned.